a guy going to learn how a criminal operates? My dear friend, now deceased, Robert Volpe, the art theft investigator from the NYPD, used to tell me the only good cop can actually think like a thief. You know, you can't be some Harvard graduate, squeaky clean, doesn't have a clue what's going on in the street and be a good cop. You have to be able to look and think like the thief. How would I pull off this job if I was a thief? How would I rob that armored car? How would I embezzle that money? Doesn't mean that you would do it because you're an honest man. You chose to be a cop. That's what you chose to do. That's your make. You can't change makes. You know, you don't see a, a good kid becomes bad just because he decides to write, say, a crime novel, you know? But he might write the best crime novel and create the best fictional characters. In a way, he has to start learning how to think like a thief. Well, a good cop needs to know what's going on in the street, what's inside that criminal's mind. The only way you're going to know what's inside the criminal's mind is if he tells you. They can write a book, but the book's bullcrap. What he tells you is where you're. And I learned a lot in the witness protection unit I worked in for a year. I had mob guys telling me about the mob, and they were lonely and they wanted to talk. Funny thing is, I even was turned on to De Tolnay, the Michelangelo scholar. I had one guy who loved Michelangelo. He was an expert in art, and I don't know his real name. He was in the witness protection unit, and his name was secret. But he said, "You got to read De Tolnay." And he said he turned me on to Agony and Ecstasy. He said, "You got to read Agony and Ecstasy, Irving Stone. It's great about Michelangelo Buonarroti." You know, so I absorbed from all angles. But as a police officer, I had a great insight in that respect. You know, but Robert Volpe was a great guy, and he used to tell me, he said, "Go ahead, have dinner, go sit. You know, you don't have to go stay in the open if you feel there's a danger, but go meet people. You know, it's." And he used to do it all the time. But an interesting story is that he was concerned. You know, I learned a lot from him, and he was a real artist, and that's why we hit it off so well. He was a cop, and he was an artist, and he had some problems with his administration because they look at it a little funny. Ah, an artist, you know, he thinks he's an artist. That's well, he could guide me through that. He knew what it felt like to be an artist, but at the same time, going to this regimentalized. You know, I'm a bohemian artist in my mind and my heart, and to have to go in and be just properly clean cut and regimentalized and in the chain of command and answer to people who have no idea what art is or poetry, and they don't know how to look at the world in a colorful way but in black and white. He guided me through that. When I was starting to get really interested in art theft investigation, I went to Scotland Yards for the class. I did certain things. I, went around starting to make contacts both in the investigators and in the underworld. He started to get a little concerned because he thought I was wasting my time because there's really nowhere you can go with it. You don't make a living off of that. If you're not in the right bureau or agency, you can't get attached to a unit, and there are no units in the United States of America anyway. So when I went to forensic art with the FBI in Quantico to learn how to do the composites in forensic art, he was delighted. He said, "Now you're onto it. You're taking your artwork and you're merging it with your career as a police officer, and that's going to take you somewhere." And he started to say to me, he said, "I don't want you running around the world going to these classes in the United Kingdom or to lectures in Interpol or whatever you're planning on doing, because it's going to get you nowhere. I want to see you. It's distracting from your art." He said, you have to be an artist 100%. And this is coming from a retired cop, art theft investigator, but you know what? He was right. You have to be an artist 100%, devote your time to art. And in a way, though, the delight was with this gossips is that beyond anything the composites or the FBI forensic art training could have done, gossips has let me merge my two worlds. Art and police have become one. Like Gabriele D'Annunzio, my favorite poet, used to say, art had to be lived like a seamless unity. And in this way, and that's a true bohemian belief that goes right to the heart of Henri Musset, right through Verlaine and into, Baudelaire always tried to stress that art had to be lived, in a seamless unity. And I get to do it now because when I go to work, I feel like an artist, and when I'm an artist, I feel like a cop. Both are trained observers of people and the world. And this is as a trained observer, I'm approaching the Gardner caper through a visual investigation.
The moment in time, how will you apply this to the Gardner Gossips project?
Well, as I said earlier, my main thing is it's like I'm going into the trenches, just drawing what I see, a trained observer. And I'm not taking sides, I'm not making judgments, I'm just observing the battle, if you will, or the investigation. And that's why I'm taking a neutral approach, because if I wasn't taking a neutral approach, I wouldn't be making a truthful statement. Basically, that's the thing in a nutshell. As a as a police officer, sometimes people are uneasy discussing their crimes or their life of crime. But as an artist, it kind of puts them at ease, especially if I'm trying to paint them, and when they learn that I do touch on the human dignity of the person and the beautiful side, the good side. You know, I'm not trying to slander them or make them look bad. And so as an artist, people forget that I'm a police officer, or just like ignore the fact, and they say, "Ah, he's an artist," and I'm passionate about art, and I love art, and I'm not after it as a treasure hunter or these recovery hounds that want to make rewards. I'm just in it for the art, totally passionate and dedicated to the artwork, and and it's interesting because like Miles Connors told me a story about a museum that took him in. When he was doing his Dr. Joseph gig, where he'd walk around pretending to be Dr. Joseph, and he's such a skilled uh, art historian that he could actually con him into thinking he was a curator or a doctor of art, a doctor of history, a doctorate of art history. So in one little museum, he he befriended the people. He'd go visit. Here comes Dr. Joseph, you know. And one day he walks in with a nice collection of 16th century samurai swords, which was way better than anything the little museum had. So next thing you know, he's their best friend. They even offered to make him a curator, you know, that he gets into their archives. They let him anywhere in the museum at will. And he gained their trust so much, they'd open up their archives to him. And the whole thing is, you know, in the back of these people's mind, he has this great collection. He loves our museum, and maybe he'll bequeath us the collection when he dies. So of course they treat him like gold. But he started to get to know these people, and actually he started to respect them. And because he said, in this one little museum, I saw they really loved their collection. They really were dedicated to the collection. They loved the art. They weren't in it for money. They weren't in it for, and he said they weren't snooty. They weren't condescending to the public. And these are the problems he had with the bigger museums. He said since he was a kid, one side of his family, a grandfather, would bring him to museums like the Boston Fine Arts, where he felt they were condescending, they were snooty, they looked down on him. Like he just felt like, because of his social status as a working class family, he did not belong there. He felt it was a world for the wealthy and for the doctorates and the you know, the Wall Street bankers. And so he always resented the way he was made to feel in these museums. And in the long run, you know, that sometimes a lot of these curators are just like, or these museums or institutions, some of them have proven to be a little guilty of, you know, buying objects or artifacts that you know, have bad provenance, or doing a few dirty deals, or they're in it for the money. Say someone leaves a nice art collection in their will because they love their museum, they sell the collection and buy something else. And these are things that turned Miles Connors off. But when this little museum befriended him, and he learned that they really loved their artwork and were dedicated to the artwork, he gave them a pass. He said, I would never steal from that museum. He stole from the others. He met people through the museum that, hey, this is Dr. Joseph, he's a friend of our museum, and he stole from those museums that he was introduced to different curators and brought into their trust as well. But the one where he felt that they were dedicated art lovers, he did not steal from that museum. And I think it's funny because that's how I gain people's trust in this arena. Whether they're good guys, bad guys, investigators, suspects, writers, they can feel when they can feel that you love the artwork.
A lot has been said about the Garden art heist, and the problem that I've always found is that most people, not all, are sycophants. They say things that they want people to hear, and they're scared of being controversial and actually saying what they truly feel. I think William Youngworth can actually be commended because he has always said what he really believes. So by being truthful about your feelings towards the Garden heist, will any negative feedback alarm or frighten you?
I don't care about pissing anyone off. I think that the truth needs to be told. I've said many times, say like with the Youngworth story, I think that they never wanted to give anyone the reward. All they wanted to do was arrest somebody. They want a body more than they, or at least they wanted the body more than they wanted the art. I hope that's changed. And at that point, when Youngworth said, I believe it was 1997, when he said, enough is enough, I have to talk to the press. You people won't leave me alone. You give us the reward and a total blanket immunity, and we'll give you the art. And I'm saying time after time again, they claimed he was bluffing only because they said he's lying, he's bluffing. Why didn't they call his bluff? Well, I'm not afraid to say it. They did not want anyone that might have had something to do with this crime to be on the French Riviera drinking expensive champagne with the reward money and total immunity. So they lost a good opportunity to recover the work, and if there was no opportunity, they didn't believe it, they should have called his bluff and said, okay, here's your immunity, pal, here's your reward, now let's see all the paintings. Instead, they played games with him. They said, you give us one painting, and then we'll talk about a reward or immunity. And he said, no way, you're setting me up. I walk in with one painting after what you've done to me, throw me in jail, raid my house, just beat up on me in the press, where there's quote unquote smoke them out. He said, no way, it's a setup. And if he didn't have the opportunity to bring back the paintings and it was a bluff, they also blew a perfect opportunity to show they can be trusted at that point. 2 times they pushed people away. The Youngworth story was worldwide attention. I mean, it's worldwide press, still talked about, the big headlines, we've seen it. And they showed that they couldn't be trusted. So now the criminals are in hiding. And the one guy that sent the letter, the anonymous letter, and they had to put the number in the paper like a dead letter drop. And that guy said, I'll get you back the paintings. You put this number in the paper to let me know you want to deal with me. No federal involvement, no investigators. Of course, there was people like Connolly in the Fed who would drop dimes to the bad guys, so they had insiders. They had FBI agents talking to the underworld because they were in their pockets, so to say. So then what happens once this is all going down? The guy gets on one more contact and says, the feds are all over this. I told you no investigators, but I know the feds are all over this, so the deal's off. So twice they sent messages to the underworld, and those are the 2 most famous. There's been 1 or 2 other messages they've sent to the underworld that you cannot trust us. We want to lock you up. Nothing's coming back unless there's arrest, and no one's getting a reward.